Good evening. It is May 25th at 7:01 p.m. I would like to call the Public Safety and General Government Committee of the Common Council to order. We have our roll call. The only members of the committee currently here are Mr. Goldstein and myself, Ms. McMurr. We do not have a quorum, so we cannot do acceptance of the minutes from March 23rd. We had no meeting in April. Is there anybody here for public participation?
Hold on one second.
There is a Mark.
Mark, if you would like to speak, can you please raise your hand electronically? It does not appear so.
No problem. Thank you. We'll close public participation. We have no new business. We do not have any action items, I should say, but we do have a couple of things for discussion. So I think this will be a short meeting. Chief, I am reluctant to even have this discussion, but I do think we're recording it and we have it on the agenda. So we should go ahead and do it just as an update, and hopefully people will check it out if you don't mind. Okay, so we wanted to get an update from you on traffic patrol because that's been going on for a few months now, and see where we're at and how that's going for you guys. I know there's been a lot more police officers out and about, and I've heard from several constituents and council members how thrilled they are. So that's good.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're one below full staffing right now. We're swearing in another 2 next Thursday. So our staffing right now will be at 100%.
Great.
And we're working already leaning forward and planning on putting people in the academy for July. We're expecting 3 retirements in July. So our staffing is great. We've had a turnaround. We've had a lot of qualified candidates go through the system. We've just finished since the new year. I think we've had at least 22 officers through field training.
It's great.
So it's
really great.
Kudos to
We've been
you.
really busy.
That's great though. Kudos to you, because I know that's been a hard battle for you guys the last few years. And so that is to your credit for sure.
Yeah, we have 4 in the academy right now. We have 3 lined up to go to the academy at the beginning of July. So
Great.
It's just a continual process. So we're already pre-planning for the whole year and into next year, the spring of 2024, to prepare for those retirements. Always doing interviews. We're doing a lot of background investigations. We're vetting a lot of people. Some people aren't qualified, so we're not lowering our standards at all. We have disqualified many candidates based on what we found in a background investigation, but it's working out well. In regards to the traffic unit and our traffic enforcement for the police department, approximately 2 months ago, the manpower allowed us to transfer 2 more officers into the traffic unit. So we have a combined total of 3 officers in our traffic unit. All are motorcycle certified, so you're going to see the motorcycles out there a lot more. They're all over, especially we've had a lot of good weather. So they've been doing a lot of selective enforcement. Just a quick snapshot of where we are. Our citations are up 145%.
Wow.
Compared to last year at this time. In April alone, there was 1,014 citations issued. We did have an initiative, which was a grant program on distracted driving, where we put out a lot of, they were grant funded overtime shifts targeting distracted driving, officers are doing selective enforcement applications, seeing motorists use their cell phone and pulling them over and issuing a citation. So that, in combination with the new traffic officers, the morale has gone up, and we're seeing a whole younger generation of officers just graduating the academy and field training. A lot more self-initiated car stops coming from patrol division. So the activity has increased 145% since last year at this time. I ran the numbers this morning in preparation of this meeting. So far, 1,910 citations. Since New Year at this point last year was 778.
That's
So,
amazing.
Yeah. And more or less the community policing, Sergeant Calise runs the traffic unit. he keeps all the stats. So when we do get complaints of a specific street, we do write that down, and we'll track the enforcement there, and we'll give feedback to the person who reported it to us. And so more or less, a lot of our locations that we're conducting enforcement on are places where we get emails from. We still get a lot of text tips, a lot of emails on, we're waiting Highland Avenue, Witch, Beach Road, West Rocks, East Rocks. Those are all high complaint areas. And we've been more or less assigning a lot of the selective enforcement out there. So it's up, it's going to continue. Also, call volume has also gone up within the patrol division. We're busy. We've seen an increase in calls for service. So the patrol division is 3 to 11 day shift. They're a busy shift.
Yeah.
So we have seen a general increase in overall activity in the patrol division, traffic unit, community policing, and so things are going well.
That's great. It's great to hear. I mean, it's kind of sad that there's that many traffic violations to be given, but so we want to remind everybody, slow down, don't do distracted driving. I mean, keep your cell phone away when you're driving and, follow the signals and stuff. So thank you for that. We really
and just in addition to that, yesterday we partnered with the Connecticut State Police. We had 9 officers from community policing, and we highlighted trucks. A lot of the triaxles and the commercial trucks. In the morning, they went out there and they were doing a lot of car stops. I think they issued 13 citations on overweight trucks. They have the ability to come down and weigh the trucks. The state police bring down their equipment. So we were using Betts Park to corral some of these large trucks and weigh them to make sure they're safe. And there's so many regulations with commercial trucks in regards to licensing and safety and the inspections to these trucks, the brake lines and stuff. So we, as we've seen the development in the city, that goes in hand. We're going to see a lot more commercial trucking. So
you said there were 13 citations yesterday for overweight trucks?
No, not overweight, just in general.
Oh, just in general.
Different violations. Okay. There was that was just overweight truck is just one of the violations that was highlighted, but just other commercial violations. The trucking code is something that I never did. Traffic officers really are into it in regards to licensing, brake lines, and all the requirements that the driver needs to have in regards to a commercial driver's license. And
with this program, how often are the state police going to give us access to these, to this equipment and these tools?
Well, they have to be there because they're
well. All right, then let me rephrase.
As much as they can. They already said that they're going to come back, and we just got to schedule it. But they're busy. They're busy with the highway. They're busy with other jurisdictions. So we were glad to partner with them. It took some time to schedule them and get them down here and get them on our calendar. And I think yesterday I followed up with Sergeant Police, and he says he already has them on the calendar. I don't know the next date, but they're excited to do this enforcement. And also we've had 2 sound enforcement days, as you could tell. We have a lot of improvised mufflers in town, improvised vehicles. So the officers have been, there's been 2 operations, 2 details where the traffic unit has gone out there and more or less not say targeted, but enforced in certain areas and starting to enforce some of the noise that is created by these vehicles and a lot of it's mufflers, aftermarket mufflers and things like that, which create excessive noise. So we've had 2 operations for those in the past month also. And we plan to continue those through the summer.
That's great. You guys have been busy.
Very busy.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to note for the minutes that Mr. Meek showed up at 7:04 and you have your hand raised, Mr. Meek. So go ahead.
You're on mute, Brian.
Thank you. Chief Walsh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
Thanks. You said you're doing DOT stops? Is that right?
Well, yeah, we partnered with the Connecticut State Police Truck Unit, and they're specially trained and certified in, shall I say, inspecting commercial vehicles. And as you see, the increase in all the construction throughout the town has brought a lot of triaxles, a lot of large trucks throughout our city streets, and we definitely seen an increase. And it's been a very successful program. We've done it. I think the last time we did it was pre-COVID. So we always did it 2 or 3 times a year in the previous community policing era before COVID, and we're just starting it up again. So yes, we are doing commercial truck enforcement.
Excellent, thank you.
And by the way, just so I guess we get understanding of context for the numbers for traffic incidents and overall calls. I understand it's a huge increase from the last year, and I realize that COVID last year was not the same as it was the year before. But if you were to go back to pre-pandemic numbers, are we at the same levels now, or is it just more overall now? Like in terms of like overall traffic stops and yeah.
I'm gonna say it's our traffic unit pre-COVID and pre-manpower issues was very vigorous. I think we have 4 people in there. So with COVID pre-2020 and then 2020 on with the manpower issues, we had to deploy officers into patrol from specialized units. And then it's always a process to get them back in. It takes a long time, recruitment, and then get them through training, and then get people trained and certified, and getting them through the motorcycle courses and making sure that they're safe and they know what they're doing with motorcycles. So these training opportunities don't come up too often in Connecticut. So we're fortunate to have so many officers certified with the motorcycles.
That's great.
Great. Any other questions before we move on to the next discussion item? I'm nothing if not efficient, so let's just keep this going then. So every once in a while, I think it's been about a year, maybe a little bit more, we do a check-in with the police department on school safety. I know Chief Walsh, there was a statement that you had put out, I guess it was last month, about a group of particular individuals that have either been in the schools or out of the schools. And I thought now would just be a good time, because that came up and we haven't done it in a little while, to just talk about where we're at with school safety. If you have any updates on the group called the 504s, or any information you can share, as I understand it's probably an ongoing investigation still.
Yes, I'm glad to report a lot of that has slowed down. A lot of the activity, a lot of the intelligence that we're receiving has slowed down. Like I said in the previous statement about a month ago, right after the Christmas break in January, early February, we started to receive information of a loosely organized group of mostly middle-aged kids who organized, and they went by the moniker 504, which is the calling code from the country of Honduras. And we had got that from the intelligence of, talking to these kids. And there were some incidents. There was incidents of vandalism. There was some threatening behavior. There was a few fights involved with them. And we work a lot with the community stakeholders who provided information. And there was at least 9 to 10, at a minimum, about 9 arrests were made when that statement was released a month ago. I don't believe we had any arrests since, because we partnered with Norwalk Public Schools. We had 2 collaborative meetings with Norwalk Public Schools, Ryan Harrell Public Safety, and their team, their central office team, and the schools affected. And I think we were quite effective in bringing everybody on board, bringing the parents on board, communicating properly of what was going on. And it slowed down in communication with the Special Victims Unit, which the school resource officers are assigned to. Things have been going well. In regards to overall school safety, things are status quo, just normal day-to-day business. We're still maintaining 6 SROs, and we still have the 5 security hires currently, which rotate schools.
I know that several months ago, probably even over a year ago, and now all the time is bleeding together for me, but the mayor and you had sort of issued, and maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was Chief Kolick at the time, but to have more police presence on school grounds. And I have noticed that has continued. Can you address or talk to that at all? We do not have a dedicated officer full-time because we don't have the manpower for that, but I have seen them sort of circulating around a lot more. And I just want to bring attention to that because I think it's a good thing.
Of course, yeah. Post Uvalde last year, which I do believe is the 1-year anniversary yesterday, we did deploy and assign officers at every single school building. Since then, we've assigned 2 more SROs, and we came up with a plan of school security officers hired on overtime. 5 full-time 8-hour hires. 1 each is assigned to each high school, and then the other 3 rotate geographically to the combination of schools in that area. It was a program done by one of the SVU commanders. So the one officer will rotate. They signal in and out at each school, and they check each school parking lot. They spend time until they rotate. They rotate around to every school building.
That's great. And I know that there is money being dedicated to school security as well as part of the budget. So I think NPS is handling most of that, correct?
Yes, there's several new initiatives that we've partnered with in all public schools in regards to surveillance for security, a lot of IT, a lot of technology that we've been working. Ryan Harold is very forward leaning within all public schools, public safety. And we're always dealing with him on a day-to-day basis. And we've made a lot of strides in our partnership.
I especially appreciate that as a parent of kids in the schools. I just want to point out at 7:16, Miss Diana Revolus joined the meeting and she has her hand raised. So if you would like to ask your question or make a comment, go ahead.
First of all, Chair, I appreciate you and my apologies.
Oh, no problem.
Secondly, I think I walked in just at the right time for what I'm asking. I apologize if my question may have been something that was already stated prior to my coming in. Okay, so that being said, SROs we're very happy about. Just hearing what I'm hearing. Is there a space for these SROs to actually have like an office space at the schools that bring back engagement between children and the officers in particularly? Again, I might have missed that being said, but you know, that's just such a pivotal part. And you know how I always complain about the bus stops. I always think that's a missed opportunity at the bus stops, but just making sure they have like an actual setting within the school.
It's my understanding, I know definitely that each high school SRO has a designated office, and it's usually centrally located for access by the students. And I believe the other SROs at the middle school, elementary school combination do have a central point. I do believe at least the middle school, Officer Prada has one at West Rocks, I do believe. If not, I have to check in, but I'm definite that the school resource officers in Norwalk High and Brian McMahon have an office.
Okay, is there, and being how there's such a great adequate staffing, do you feel that will push further down? Like, I'm just gonna use the late Officer Ramirez, for example, who was with Columbus, for example. I think the sooner you can get engagement with officers, the better. If that's a possibility that's happening around the corner as such, to go down to the elementary school level?
Yeah, actually, Officer Ramirez wasn't even a school resource officer. He was
Right.
the community policing, and he took it upon
Right.
himself to network and outreach to all the kids along side by side in Columbus,
true.
on Chestnut Street there, and he sort of owned that whole area.
that's true.
As things improve, we definitely want to get back to those goals. But like we still have a very, very young police department, a lot of officers just finishing training. So we got to make sure that a lot of our officers are, before we start taking a lot of senior people out of the patrol division, we got to make sure that we have all these younger officers. We've had a whole new generation of officers come on within the past year, that they're adequately trained, they have adequate experience, and that they're mentored and they're supervised before we start making further transfers. But that's definitely on our landscape.
I appreciate that. I would ask questions about how to have to deal with the younger, that generational divide, which is pretty cool. I've had some questions with older residents, or young but older, younger, older children, if that makes sense, and their relationships to police officers that are older but younger police officers, if that makes sense.
I think so.
Right? So like a 19-year-old dealing with a 23-year-old officer, for example, and what's that dynamic type of thing. But that's a different story. I appreciate your answer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Mr. Meek.
Thank you. Chief Walsh, with respect to the real or perceived 504 gangs, what kind of follow-ups done to, are these children accompanied by legal guardians? Do we follow up on anything like that? Do we know that they have parents with legal custodial rights to these children? Thanks, if you can elaborate on that.
I really can't elaborate too much on individual cases in regards to specifics because they are juveniles. But we always do assure just any juvenile that we do deal with in any form of case 504, regardless, that they always have adequate supervision. They have adequate they have guardians. A lot of times, which is our protocol if we interact with a child at a school setting, the administration of the school will call the guardian or the parent present to be with us while we interact with them. So in any case, when we deal with a juvenile, we always make sure everybody's has proper care, guardianship, and that they're more or less all their needs are taken care of as best as they can.
Okay, thank you. I understand you can't talk about a specific case, but generally speaking, I'm getting a feeling these children do have adult representation that's legally allowed to be their parents or guardians.
If someone identifies that a parent's guardian at a school setting, usually that is up to the school to accept that person as a guardian and things like that. So it's usually pretty accepted that that person who is vouching as a guardian or a parent is their parent or guardian.
Okay, thanks, Chief Walsh.
You're welcome.
Mr. Goldstein.
Just to ask a little more broadly and not about this specific case, but just about, are there various tactics or trainings or things that the police department could be doing with the school system to try and mitigate these kinds of issues? I don't want to just call it a gang. I don't know if it's fair to do that, or, just sort of this sort of where there are groups and sometimes violent acts can occur, especially when these are middle school kids generally. I guess my question is, are there training aspects or sort of other things you're doing to work with the schools to try and, mitigate this kind of thing from happening in the future?
Well, if it's happening in a school setting, mostly it's a collaborative effort between Norwalk Public Schools and the police department, because early intervention, identification, and getting other social resources.
Right, and that's why I asked about training.
Exactly.
I'm saying, are there things that educators are aware of, or signs to look for, and what can you do in terms of your own professional expertise to basically do whatever we can to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen, or if it does happen, it gets nipped in the bud as soon as possible.
As we know, most juvenile crime is usually a social, there's something going on. It's caused probably not by chronic recidivism of criminal behavior. It's usually like so there's something going on in school. So we have a collaborative effort with the social workers within the school psychologists, in early intervention in having Norwalk Public Schools do what they do. They're very effective in communicating this stuff to us. So there's all kinds of resources through the Department of Children's Families. We have our own behavioral health unit, as we've spoken about before during these meetings, which is very effective and very busy. So some of that has also been deployed, and communication with their parents and guardians is also effective.
I see that Diana has her hand up. I don't want
Yeah,
to.
do you have a follow-up?
No,
though?
go ahead.
But I mean, the thing that I'm trying to get a sense of, and all of those things are great. The thing I'm trying to get a sense of are, first of all, are there available kinds of training modules that the police department can provide or are already providing to the Norwalk Public Schools, to deal with this kind of thing? And if so, is that administered on a routine basis?
I can't recall any specific training like you asked that we do together.
I don't know if there are. I'm just asking.
All our school resources are NASRO certified. So when you get NASRO certified as an SRO, it's not just in regards to law enforcement, the identification of juvenile behavior, social causes, educational, medical causes, and things like that.
Of course,
so it's less law enforcement and it's more social work. So the school resource officers And we have a lot of resources within Norfolk schools that we collaborate with in regards to. So they were very effective in since March and February, when we definitely got the whole team effort in regards to the parents, school psychologists, and things like that. And then it was effective.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I just want to reemphasize, because I think it's so important. It was something that I didn't know a lot about when I started in this position as chair. Not just any officer can be an SRO. You do have to go through that special training that Chief Walsh mentioned. And I think it takes a special kind of person too, because you are working in schools with children. And so you have to have a passion for that as well as the training. Ms. Revolus?
So I think just to kind of showcase why I've asked what I just did, because there's I think we become very reactive to certain things. And back in my day, there was a particular specific training that, and particularly to middle school age children, that is like completely different than dealing with any other age. Because of the dynamic in their social emotional development, their physical development, their self-reflection, and how they now identify with, instead of getting the response of their family, they're trying to get the response of their peers, right? So that being said, why I asked about the space and place for a standing officer in the schools, which I'm glad that would come, is that it gives that opportunity to build that rapport with police officers normally, right? So that rapport can then respond to certain reactions or counteract reactions that happens even in an unexpected manner, just because of the understanding that I know a cop. You know what I mean? And I don't only know a cop in a us against them type of way, but in a I'm protected or preserved type of way that I can turn and run to. I'm just going to use them as an example. Kohorlick. If I said his, no, I'm sorry. What was it? Cornell. Sorry, Cornell, if you could hear me. But I can run to Officer Cornell, and because I'm trusting of him. That's kind of why I'm talking about this, but more in a preventative manner, to see where can we foster those type of relationships. And because they're already there, just seeing how is that being developed, and in particularly younger, before they get into that middle age space. If that makes sense?
No, it does make
Yeah?
it does make
Okay.
sense. So relationship building is an essential part of any effective school resource officer,
Yeah.
and it does, as Councilman McCure pointed out, it does take the right kind of person
The
to
right
do
kind,
that,
yeah.
and to develop a relationship in a
Mhm.
non-law enforcement setting is vital.
Mm.
So they don't see him as a law enforcement; they see him as a mentor.
And that's also where the conversation, but I don't want to bring it there right now, but that conversation of having younger officers and the pros and cons of that, because it's actually good. There's pros and cons. There's really are. Like, I can identify to a younger officer if I'm a young child, you know what I'm saying? But there's also cons of being too close to the age that you're trying to direct. So I get that, but at least we start with at least fostering the relationships. Then we can get to the nitty gritties of those type of things. But that's why I'm bringing that up, if that makes sense. Because in particularly now that they get into middle school, there's this dynamic that happens where they're not little kids, and they're trying to put their place as a big kid that you want to kind of help narrate, or it can go right just because they're trying to prove themselves to their
Mhm.
peers, if that makes sense. Not to keep saying if it makes sense, but I just want to make sure, because sometimes I explain things without truly explaining it, you know? So I just want to make sure, like, I'm saying crossing my T's, dotting my I's, if that makes sense.
No, I completely understand, and well, as you'll see in the next year, there's a lot of new, younger, fresher faces in all this.
Mhm. Yeah, but hopefully they'll be guided and mentored by
Of course.
by
No,
you know,
it is we've been very lucky to have a lot of good qualified candidates come on.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
that's not
Thank
to
you.
say we don't appreciate you guys who have been there for a long time. either,
Well, but
Chief
and that's
Walsh.
what I mean. Like, that's what I just meant. Like,
Yeah,
I would hope
exactly.
these new guys gets the
Of
mentorship
course.
of our long-standing, you know, not so green behind the ear,
Yeah.
you know, type of officer, but that still does have that passion and rapport because, you know, as long as it's not the space and place of us and them, but this is our community. I think one police officer has said that to me, that's always stuck to me. There's a space and place where training becomes where it's the criminal, the police, and the civilians, but somewhere it becomes the criminal and the police, and you forget about the civilians. So if you have just those people who can mold those young, bright-eyed, ready to help our constituents in the proper way, but remember that there are, you know, civilians in there, and they're just as well a civilian too when they're not in the in their uniform. You know what I mean? Not to keep
No,
running,
I totally get
but
that.
Understood.
yeah.
It's a good point. And I think one of the things that I wasn't aware of until this year that I want to point out is Chief Walsh, Deputy Chief Blake go into schools and read. And I love that because I think that relationships with the police need to start when the kids are young. They need to look up to you and see you. And then obviously that goes into middle school then too. And they've already got that base where they have seen you and gotten to know you. And I love that you guys do that. And then it moves on to high school and then they're adults. So I think that's really important and you guys do a good job of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this? Because otherwise I'm going to circle back and we're going to approve the minutes from March now that we have a quorum.
No, I think that.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
And then I'll
No,
go to you, Diana. Don't worry.
No, all I was gonna say was, I really appreciate Chief Walsh that you know, obviously that you're here and having this discussion with us and talking about this. I think conversations like this help reinforce that everyone, you know, we are all on the same team and making sure that, you know, that school can be as safe a place as possible and for everyone involved. So just wanted to say we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Definitely. Thank you. Any other questions before I move on for minutes? This is the boring part, but since we have quorum, we might as well. I need a motion to accept the minutes of our March 23rd meeting. Thank you, Mr.
Motion.
Goldstein. Thank you. Do we have any changes or corrections? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Mr. Meek abstains. Thank you so much, you guys. And that is all we have for this evening. Ms. Revolus.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you being here tonight, especially since we didn't have action items. And thank you to Chief Walsh for always having a really nice conversation with us and giving us the information.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Good night,
Good night.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.